biggest challenge facing the United States today is not healthcare.
It's not global warming.
It's not even terrorism.
As serious as those issues may be, the biggest issue that our country is facing is the enormous national debt. We have a debt bomb that is about to explode, and it can cripple our country.
The federal debt as of September 2009 is $12 trillion. The federal government adds to this $1 billion every day through additional borrowing. The recent explosion in national debt threatens to bankrupt the United States, endangers the national security of our country, and will inflict tremendous harm on future generations.
The final deficit total in 2009 was $1.4 trillion. That should sober us all. Gross federal debt would rise to more than 114% of gross domestic product by 2019.
Both the United States Government Accountability Office and the Congressional Budget Office state that the escalating levels of debts are unsustainable.
But what does it mean when we say unsustainable? To me, it means that we have reached a tipping point, and if we don't do something, America's economy is going to go over the cliff. Unsustainable means that at some point we're going to have to raise interest rates higher and higher to get people to buy our notes. That's going to bring about in its wake inflation and then hyperinflation. We're going to start printing more dollars, and the value of the dollar will fall, perhaps even collapse.
Leaders have started complaining about U.S. fiscal management. If leaders lose confidence in the U.S. economy and decide not to invest in U.S. treasuries, the United States could not pay off its debts. Recently, Asian banks have started to prefer European investments over the dollar. Creditors could demand higher interest rates, which would make servicing the U.S. debt that much more costly.
The federal government is the worst credit card abuser in the world, and internationally our credit and credibility are on the line.
Every dollar the government borrows from a foreign country makes us less secure as a nation. China and other countries could refuse to buy any more U.S. debt, driving the dollar's value down sharply and wrecking the U.S. economy. In October 2009, Moody's Investor Service told the U.S. government that if it did not reduce their deficits and debts over the next 3 to 4 years, its bonds would lose their AAA ratings. If there is a national crisis, like Hurricane Katrina or the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the government may not even be able to respond if it has maxed out its credit and can no longer borrow.
Last year, 68% of our debt was financed by foreign entities.
I'm thinking of my 21-year-old daughter. She and her husband are going to have to pay their share of an $800 billion interest payment that won't buy them anything. No service, no security, no better environment, no health care for those who can't afford it.
As a college student, I'm concerned with our current generation's spending and the massive debt that our government's been building up. When I start working, I'm going to be faced with high taxes and high interest rates, and our economy is going to be worse off than it is today.
The easy path is just to simply borrow until the credit markets will no longer allow that. Interest rates will go up, economic growth will go down, our children and grandchildren are left with the bill. Every generation in our country, every single one, has been willing to do the difficult work and make the occasional sacrifices so that those who will follow can inherit a better way of life and a stronger country.
I pledge allegiance to America's debt and to the Chinese government that lends us money and to the interest for which we pay, compoundable with higher taxes and lower pay until the day we die.
We propose a 5-step process to attack the massive debt that is about to strangle the country.
First, Congress and the President should pass a bill to cut individual and corporate tax rates. In the 1920s, 1960s, and 1980s, tax rates were reduced. Economic growth increased. Government revenues rose 61% from 1921 to 1928, 62% from 1961 to 1968, and 54% in the 1980s.
Second, Congress and the President should pass a bill to limit spending to no more than 20% of the gross domestic product, the average level maintained since World War II until recently. Government must start with the maximum available to spend and then prioritize and allocate the funds for the money it has. In the past, Congress has passed bills to limit its spending, such as the 1985 Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act and the 1997 Balance of Budget Act. In the year 2000, the government had a national budget surplus of $236 billion. The government must and can limit its spending.
Third, Congress and the President should pass a bill that would prohibit deficit spending except for national emergencies. Just as American households have to live within their means, so does the federal government. It has to say no when it does not have the money, or only add a new spending program by eliminating an old spending program.
If we can't pay for it, we can't do it. And we just keep spending. And there's nothing in the bank.
Fourth, the Constitution should be amended to give the President the line item veto. Congress gave President Clinton the line item veto, and in 1997 he vetoed 82 times to delete unnecessary expenditures in 11 spending bills. He saved taxpayers nearly $2 billion over 5 years. In 1998, the Supreme Court ruled the presidential line item veto unconstitutional, and therefore an amendment to the Constitution is required. It is the only way to stop the out-of-control pork barrel spending.
Lastly, Congress should pass a bill requiring the national debt to be under 40% of GDP. The current debt is 85% of the United States GDP. Since 1957 until recently, the U.S. debt averaged 37% of GDP. Just as other countries have reduced their debt, the United States has to get serious about reducing its debt.
Doing nothing is not an option.
Do we really think America is unsinkable?
Reducing the government spending is politically difficult, but it must be done, because the alternative, the United States in bankruptcy, is a far worse situation. Reducing the national debt has to be one of our country's highest priorities if we want our children to enjoy economic prosperity and be citizens of an independent, secure nation. If politicians fail to act before a devastating financial crisis hits, the citizens of our great nation will pay a tremendous price.
I left you a note, letting you